The GeekWave. This is the low-budgeted show. It's the show so low, does have not a budget. It does not. If stuttered that one out, but you get it. Just having fun. It's the Halloween season. This is our first GeekWave of the Halloween season. I've done one the past couple of Halloween seasons, but this time it's the month of the Universal Monsters here at Tsunami Studios, and I figured for our first GeekWave of the month, let's talk about one of the biggest icons of pop culture, Let's talk about Mr. Frankenstein over here. Yes, we're talking Frankenstein's monster. This incredibly fun Halloween season. But of course, before we do that, we have news to talk about. And it's a pretty interesting smattering of stuff, some big things that I'm sure a lot of people are interested to hear my thoughts on. And if you're not, I understand, but we're going to be talking about them anyway. So happy Halloween, everyone. We already talked about Creature from the Black Lagoon. We talked about Monster High the movie. The time of this video's release, I believe the Dead Man Batmaning of will have come out, but I'm not too certain. And we've talked Werewolf by Night. And we're going to be talking some more Universal Monsters as the story progresses. But let's start with Frankenstein this week, buddy. Fun. But we have news to talk about. A lot of stuff that I'm generally curious about, and we'll be talking Super Mario eventually. But before that, we have to talk about Tsunami. Not Tsunami. I was going to say, we have to talk about Tsunami Studios. No, we just did that. That's the wrong part of the notes, dude. We have to talk about Scott Snyder, because Scott Snyder's original comic book from Francesco, what is his name? He was one of the big people that got Archie back off the ground, during that time. And can I find the writer's name here? Just Francesco Francavilla. Their Night of the Ghoul comic book will be being adapted into a movie. Yeah, so I think 2 years ago, Snyder got this huge deal with Comixology. Essentially, it was he's going to put these two, not even two, but it was these two major things. I know the two major ones were the one he had with Capullo, and I think the one, doesn't matter, there was 8 comic books that he announced that he was writing, and there's going to get a bunch of cool artists on them to make the books. The idea is these comic books are straight up like that thing Netflix did with Miller World, where they're you make the comic books, we'll make the TV show. That's what these were, and Night of the Ghoul is officially the first one that will be coming down that pipeline. In that smattering, there was Capullo's We Have Demons, there was Tula Lote's Barnstormers, there was I can't remember their name, but Clear was one of them, and then there was a I don't think any of them were really bad, the ones I did read. I did not read all of them, but they were pretty good. The ones I did read, Night of the Ghoul was really fun too, and now it's going to be made into a film again, so that's kind of fun. I like this because it feels like a better idea than just reissuing old stuff to make it because it's a property. If you're getting paid to write it, because Snyder's not a hack. Regardless of what you think of everything he does, he's not really a hack. So I'm curious to see how this is going to go. That's very exciting and very fun. I Night of the Ghoul is a good book. I hope it's something fun. And Francesco Francavilla's artwork is breathtaking. They are one of my favorite creators out there. Can't wait to see more from them, but this is kind of exciting. I like it. Barnstormers has been my favorite, and I don't know if that one will ever be made, but I'd hope so, because it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. Jumping away from Night of the Ghoul, we have a couple of, not a couple trailers right away, but we got another trailer to talk about for Violent Night. This is, Santa Claus David Harbour doing his John Wick. I've talked about it a lot, and we'll probably cover it eventually when the trend dies out, but John Wick started this current trend in Hollywood where it's you get kind of an actor who's not known for their action roles, you have them come back to a bigger thing, hyper stylized violent action, and you get a lot of films greenlit. Bullet Train is the most recent example, not just because the director is a director of John Wick, but It's just that vibe, and I haven't seen Bullet Train. I have no desire to see Bullet Train, but Violent Night, I enjoy the concept more because it's like, yeah, what if Santa hated himself and then he had to save some rich people? That's fun. Like, that's an area to explore. I love a good Christmas story that it makes Santa out to be a loser. I think that's fun. Maybe this maybe this holiday season, we'll talk about some of my favorite Christmas movies. I think I'm gonna do the Santa Claus movies because there's a new show coming out. But man, that's fun. Like Violent Night, the action was good. David Harbour's good. The only real question we have to ask ourselves is this going to be worth it? To which I say, probably not. You know, is the movie actually going to be good? Who's to say? Maybe it'll be good, but I genuinely don't know. Now, moving away from that, there's some other news we have to talk about in terms of like the horror realm. I say Violent Night is more horror-ish, I guess, but finally confirmed something that has been talked about for a very long time that we've all been kind of like, when is this actually going to break? When are we going to get to this? Blumhouse himself took to his Twitter. He was like, guess what? Coming in 2023, we're going to start production on an official Five Nights at Freddy film. Which I'm like, yes, you are. That is a great idea, a really good concept, and I'm so glad they're doing it. I think that is awesome. Five Nights at Freddy, a game somehow targeted for children that is a horror game, and there's so much lore involved in the Five Nights at Freddy universe, so I'm like, yeah, you could do an entire franchise out of that. It's a good modern property that will get kids to go see a horror film, so I love it. And the Jim Henson Creature Feature Shop is going to be working on the animatronics. I'm like, yeah, dude, that is cool. I'm all for that. Shove them all in a box, get it in there. You could do something fun. Now, I have played one of the Five Nights games, and I thought it was fine. Again, that style of game is not really for me, but this is a series that I think deserves its own franchise, and I definitely believe could be something special. It's also just sadly, just a slight, twist around the river from us getting like a Fortnite or an Among Us or a Roblox movie. I am surprised that due to the success of the Lego film, whoever owns the rights to make a Roblox movie hasn't decided to do that. I'm genuinely surprised, but that's cool. Five Nights at Freddy movie, I'm all for that. I'm genuinely all for that. I think it's fun. Now this is it. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, the biggest piece of news to talk about in our lives. I don't think I have, at this point, there has not been a single platform or social media site that I have talked about my opinions on the Chris Pratt-led Super Mario Bros. Movie. Nintendo Direct happened over the weekend. We got ourselves a trailer. And I'm going to say two very important things that I want people to realize. Number one, Chris Pratt is not really a good voice actor. He was good as Emmett because Emmett was him screaming loudly, which was his bit from Guardians and Parks and Rec. Two, this movie can survive with him. I will never say I've gone to a movie for the Chris Pratt of it all, because I haven't. But if he has to be Mario for this to get made, it is a noble sacrifice because the animation has no right to look as good as it does. And literally the trailer opens up with like the penguins attacking the Koopas. I'm like, oh yeah, there's penguins in this universe. I completely forgot about that. I don't think Jack Black's a great fit for Bowser either. Like it sounds too cartoony, and then you have Chris Pratt coming in like, hey, yo, what's going on here? Doing a really bad accent that's semi-Brooklyn, semi-Italian. I can't really tell. And I don't know. I just think it's weird. So I think I know the plot of the movie, though, because if it's going off like the original lore of the universe, him and Luigi fall through a pipe and they wake up in the Mushroom Kingdom and he has to go fight Bowser, get the princess saved, bada bing, bada boom. I think it's going to happen that him and Luigi get separated and Luigi gets stuck in like the haunted area and he's going to get chased by like ghosts and stuff and he's going to like get a mansion he stays in. Cool, that's fun. I don't know, again, if it's necessary for Chris Pratt to be Mario to get this going, fine, I will accept that. But If we could have had somebody else do it, would I be upset? Absolutely not. Somebody else could have done it. The animation looks fine. Mario looks fine. There's nothing wrong with him. It's not different enough where I'm upset, but the noticeable changes to him are like apparent, and you just feel that. It's like in the Patrick Star show when SpongeBob's got like the different tie and the different set of hair, and you're like, that's obviously SpongeBob, but something about it just doesn't emulate the SpongeBob I know. That's what this Mario feels like. So I'm cautious. But if this is what it takes for us to get more Nintendo movies, fine. I mean, a noble first effort. I liked in the Nintendo Direct too that Chris Pratt was like talking about how his entire career has been leading to voicing Mario. Like, I've wanted my whole life to voice Mario. Why would you ever think you would do that? Like, that is such a specific thing, you know? Like, and I know kids are like, I would love, like, when I was a kid, I'm like, I want to play Donatello in a movie. But I've never been like, yeah, my whole career has been leading up to the voicing of Donatello. I don't know. It seems really weird to me. But whatever, he's doing it. And he's getting more money than I'll ever see in my life. So why should I complain about Chris Pratt doing anything? What's the point? Mario film is scheduled for April. Will I talk more Mario at that point? Yes, I will. Month of Mario, maybe? Should April be the month of Mario where we do a bunch of silly Mario stuff? Maybe. That could be fun. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. We will see. Moving away from that, we have another trailer to talk about, and this is very compelling to me. This is a narrative that I'm so glad we finally get to talk about. I have so many thoughts and feelings on this narrative. I love it. So, a long time ago, kind of at like the conception of HBO Max, it was revealed that Mindy Kaling would be working on and starring as the first South Asian Velma Dinkley from the Scooby-Doo franchise. Hard at work on that. Well, just the other day, we got our first trailer and we got like a cast reveal. And I have a lot of thoughts on this. So, the trailer comes out around the same time that the new Scooby-Doo short comes out where Velma's revealed to be LGBT, and I'm like, that's good. The character has been queer-coded since her conception. That's all fine by me. I don't care. But the trailer for the Velma TV show comes out. It's Mindy Kaling's Velma talking to HBO Max about like, they rebooted Velma and she's a girl of color. It's like so lame. It's such like this easy like woke bullshit. And so I'm so confused as to what this trailer was. First off, it wants to emulate that thing that the Harley Quinn cartoon did when it's like, hey, we're just like that Deadpool cartoon, but we exist. And HBO Max is going to let us say fuck and we're going to swear. Like, it's doing that. But I don't know if it's Mindy Kaling's like personification or if it's something about this writer's room where it's like it comes off as so like arrogant and more like annoying and not like funny than like the way Harley Quinn did. And I don't know what it was, but something about that, it sounded like, hey, we get it. Everyone's going to hate this. So we'll say we hate ourselves too. And it's going to be this like anti-Velma piece. And it's such a weird concept for that. And I'm just like, that is distinctively not the character. Like, I don't care if she is South Asian. I don't care who's voicing her. I don't care if you make an adult animated cartoon Scooby-Doo show, okay? If it's Velma and she's solving like this thing at a college, that is fine by me. Like, there's nothing wrong with that concept. That on paper works. I'm fine with that. The trailer you released is like Velma like yelling at HBO Max for doing it as opposed to being in support of it. Like, we're going to do something new. It's like, why would we change something that's so good and classic? Like, that is a weird choice that doesn't really bode well for the tone of the show. And then the other point of controversy comes in two things. So they revealed the cast of the characters you know. So Mindy Kaling will be Velma. Glenn Howerton will be Fred, who looked to be in a completely different art style than the other characters, which I was like, what does that mean exactly? Okay. Constance Wu will be Daphne, who in this interpretation will be Asian American, which is like, okay, fine. I don't care about that at all. Like, again, the race of these characters don't matter, okay? Sam Richardson is Shaggy, but he's just called Norville in this one. Again, change the race, it doesn't matter. I will say, though, one thing that I always stand by is that Shaggy should be your one character that is Caucasian, because he needs to represent, like, what the hippie culture is of that time. So there was the comic book Scooby Apocalypse that came out where they updated Shaggy to look like a hipster. In the 60s, he was clearly like the stoner vibe. I feel like they should, maybe this is what they're going to do with Fred, where Fred's going to be like, like the millennial, like, oh, metrosexual guy. I don't know. I don't have anything against what they're doing with Norville here, but that one was just like, I feel like you're getting all the wrong vibes of this character. I don't know. Like, it's very weird. And for some reason, like, Norville and Daphne were in like a different animation style in the stills they showed, and that was pretty dumb. So I'm like, okay, I don't have anything wrong with this cast. I hope this show is good. And then they're like, we're not doing Scooby-Doo because we couldn't find a way to modernize Scooby-Doo for audiences. And that's where I'm like, oh, you don't know what you're doing then. You don't. Are you, like, I don't understand that. Where Scooby, like, the dog is not going to be in the show because they couldn't find a way for, like, it to work in, like, a modern setting or to have that be natural. What are you talking about? That is so stupid. Like, nobody on your writing staff could figure out how to put Scooby-Doo in a show based on Scooby-Doo characters, not even as a main character. How is that a weird concept? You could even have it that Velma's parents own the dog, or like Shaggy finds him and like he's hiding him in his like dorm room or something, or he's just like the mascot of the high school and Velma is the only one that takes care of him. And then, if you wanted to, even Shaggy gets high and the dog talks to him, and that's where they learn the dog can talk. It's like, you can't find a way to make Scooby-Doo work in a Scooby-Doo adjacent property. Like, it's too much of a weird concept for modern audiences to understand that you can't do a Scooby-Doo. So look, the vibes were off from the trailer. Very aggressive, very aggressively, like, in your face about how woke the show is going to be in this really non-cathartic way. So that sucked. The voice casting is fine. The stills are in different animation styles, and I'm not sold on some of the choices that they seem to be making. Nothing to do with race, just something to do with, where are you going with this? It doesn't seem like you have an actual plan. And you don't know how to do Scooby-Doo. So you are, currently for me, you're batting 3 strikes. Like, I'll give you more because I'm genuinely curious for this project and I want to see it be good. But doing all that stuff does not bode well for you in terms of me. I'm sorry, none of that is exciting or good. Very upset with Velma right now. You think that'd be it for news? So we have more. New York Comic Con was this weekend. A bunch of comic stuff would drop, but we got trailers for Titans Season 4 and Doom Patrol Season 4. Both of those are going into their 4th season. So Titans will come out in November. Part 1 for both of these will be this year. And I was reading some comments of people who are watching Titans, and they're like, oh, look, they're finally letting Raven and Beast Boy be together. Almost like they were waiting for the actor to be legal age. And you're like, that's disturbing to say. That did not interest me at all, but cool. Brother Blood's appearing, Jinx is appearing. That's fun. People will like that, I guess. And then Doom Patrol will premiere in December, and yeah, it looks like we're going to have fun. Rita's going to be taking charge of the team, being the leader. Space Case will be appearing as a character. A lot of good stuff coming to that show. Fun concepts all around. Like that both of those still somehow managed to get their life together, and they're still going on for some reason. It's surprising as hell, man. So good for both of those shows. Stargirl's probably going to be canceled because you didn't talk about Stargirl at all. But that's okay. This season has been slow, and probably all of those shows are going to be doing some big crossover, which is not exciting, which is sad. But we have one more piece of news to talk about. At the time of this recording, it is confirmed that Kenneth Branagh will be putting on the mustache one more time for Hercule Poirot because he is doing another Poirot film. The Haunting in Venice is this one. I'm not familiar with this one at all. The other two, yes, I am. This one, cool. There was a huge cast announcement. Very fun. Good for him. If he wants to do it, fine by me, I like those kind of movies. And like, Craig's doing one, Branagh's doing one. I'm all for it. Get more people, get more actors to do these kind of films, because it's slowly bringing back like the mid-level movie. slowly. There was weird scenes in like Death on the Nile where it was extremely high budgeted, but a bunch of actors getting to talk to each other. Now, who done it? I'll always watch one of those. So good. This is all exciting. No complaints about any of this. Love all of that. Good for you. Agatha Christie works getting the limelight. That is exciting. Bunch of stuff. Very, very cool. So that is all the news we have. And when we come back from the break, we're going to return from the grave with body parts not our own and a brain we don't understand, because we're going to be talking Frankenstein's monster. So I've broken this up into about 4 separate categories: movies, television, comic books, and toys. Because those are the things of my life. And in doing research for this, I've learned a couple of things. There's a lot of like homages made where it's like taking the name, doing something different with it. So we're not going to talk about all those like Frankenhooker. Like, I don't need to talk about that. You know, I don't need to say Frankenhooker to you guys, because Frankenhooker is something that is just a parody of Frankenstein. Frankenhooker, you know, don't need to see it. You don't need to see Frankenhooker. I don't know how many times I have to tell you not to watch Frankenhooker. Frankenhooker is not something we're going to be talking about today. We will never be talking about Frankenhooker, okay? We're not going to talk about Frankenhooker. But I do want to kind of just talk a little bit about the original story of Frankenstein, because Mary Shelley deserves more credit than what she's ever been given for the genre of horror, because Frankenstein was, you know, the first like horror story kind of, and I think that's cool. So Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, is an 1818 novel written by English author Mary Shelley. Frankenstein is the story of Victor Frankenstein, a young scientist who creates a sapient creature in an unorthodox scientific experiment. Shelley started writing the story when she was 18, and the first edition was published in London on January 1st, 1818, when she was 20. Could you imagine being 20 years old and you write the most prolific work of fiction in the entirety of the world? Probably. I think, was this where genre was invented? Because other things were just like poems and shit, but this is like a thing to tell children about. Like, it's over 200 at this point. That's crazy to think about, isn't it? Kind of cool. Kind of cool in that. And yes, you know, we could get into everything about Lord Byron and what a loser he is, and how she's like, I would rather die, and I'm going to show what a piece of shit you are than be with you. And I'm like, fair, babe, fair. I think it's something you have to talk about. And, you know, I encourage all of you who maybe haven't read the original book. You can find some good audio versions of it, and they're definitely worth checking out. But Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, is definitely worth reading. A very fascinating book. A very cool study. We don't make them like that anymore, you know? It's kind of cool how like some forms of art can survive for that long and just become something of its own. I love to see it. I live for it, but it is, I wouldn't say almost forgotten that that's where the monster starts in. I would say it's just more like the actual conception of the character is like the Universal monster film from the 30s. I feel like Boris Karloff is people's interpretation of that character. It is mine. Like, that was probably my first exposure to Frankenstein's monster, was that beautiful aesthetic made for the character. And you know, this one became iconic because that's what the style became for the character. The green skin, the bolts on the neck, the flat head with like the hair. Sometimes there's a cut on their head, but it's like a flat top with the really dark black hair. Like, that is what the character has become, and it's iconic. And there are a bunch of movies of like the Karloff era. I'm not really going to get into all of them. Essentially what I want to just like focus on is like the character, because like it is one of the greatest and most important stories that people seem to understand. Like, there was like that article going around a couple years back where it's like, the book was banned because Frankenstein's the victim and people are uncomfortable with it. It's like, yeah, like, the story is a character of tragedy built to be this thing that it doesn't want. Its creator is a cynical person who took life from these other places to create this hodgepodge of ideas into this monster that's supposed to be this thing, but it's beautiful. Like, it starts the trend, and I don't know, maybe starts the right word, but it's one of the earliest examples of mainstream Hollywood where this will become like the trope forever, because King Kong will do this a few years later. All the other horror monsters will do this, where it's like the creature is born from the scientific or intense horror experiment, and then they become a figure of tragedy, where it's like it doesn't want to be the thing it's perceived as. And that is really cool. That is just really cool to see, and a really fun way to show light on this character. And then as the stories went on, he had a bride, which was a fascinating story. I love The Bride of Frankenstein. That is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love a lot of this, like, hey, he meets Abbott and Costello, he meets the Wolfman, he meets the Mummy, he meets the Dracula. I love all of that insanity, but the original Universal monsters, like, that is the template. So many things emulate that. So many things, like, about what the character looks like, how it moves, how it behaves, how it talks. It comes from that design. It comes from that aesthetic, and it is just a really good concept. Just one that is parodied so much. And I don't really want to talk about like the parodies, even though that is kind of Frankenstein in pop culture, like Frankenweenie and all that. But I just kind of want to talk about like the actual monster, like things that are the monster, and we'll talk about those. So this is the one. This is the iconic one. When you picture Frankenstein, you picture Boris Karloff. You do. No matter what anybody says, that's what they picture. And if you picture something else, it's because it's homaging this classic monster. Such is the case with Hotel Transylvania, which, yes, we're going there next. I know people are like, ugh, that movie's so weird, but it's a surprisingly rich concept. I cannot fault the Hotel Transylvania series for being a surprisingly rich concept, and for being such a cool idea and just existing with great characters and a great interpretation of those characters. Tartakovsky's a brilliant animator and somebody who knows what they're doing. And this Frankenstein is just like, he's a goofball. It's Kevin James. He's married to the nanny, It's all funny and silly, and we live for it. We love it. He's surprisingly cool. It's the same design, just slightly variated on it. And what comes later on, like, for some interpretations, is like the scarring and like the actual like stitches holding him together. Like, that becomes like a trend and a joke. But this one, the big brutish shoulders, the iconic talking patterns, I don't hate it. I cannot sit here and tell you that Hotel Transylvania sucks, because it doesn't. It's better than it has any right to be, and that is true. Such is the case with Young Frankenstein, which is one of the only parodies I kind of want to talk about with this character. And it's not even a parody of, like, it's more like a parody of just, like, the concept of those movies. That's what Mel Brooks was doing. He's going to take the original piece of Frankenstein lore and turn it into this really intense comedy that is just so funny and bizarre. And that creature is, again, the apathetic creature who does the exact same bits as the Karloff one, but it becomes like this trope and this parody of itself, where it like destroys a house and meets a blind guy and hurts the blind guy, and it's just very fun, and is obsessed with music and has a nice wife and Madeline Kahn, and we're like, who doesn't want that? I love Young Frankenstein. It is a funny movie. It's one of my favorite things that Brooks has done, and I'm a huge Brooks fan. Like, Peter Boyle gets the physicality, but it's like, this isn't something we're supposed to take seriously. So if I want to look a little more tragic, if I want to look a little more silly, do dumber things with my movements, be kind of like horny on main, you can do it. You're allowed to get away with it a little bit more, and we're all here to support it. It's really fun. Yeah, I mean, I say it's a parody, right? I say this movie's a parody, but it's more like an homage, where it's like Brooks is just doing a classic monster flick, and it's just too funny in that regard, where it's like, yeah, this works. And the physicality, again, it all goes back to that one thing for the physicality. That's what it is, and that's what Young Frankenstein does. So this interpretation, yes, it is a Frankenstein, but you get what I mean. It works there. Now we have another one to talk about, which is so far the biggest deviation from the character, but not that big a deviation. So a little while ago, maybe like a year ago now, I talked about Hugh Jackman in Van Helsing, one of the worst movies ever made. Well, that had all the classic movie monsters in it, trying to, like, again, rebrand them, but we'll talk about that again. And this one had its own interpretation of Frankenstein's monster, who was this insanely jacked, intense dude wearing these disgusting robes, just screaming. He was created to be this thing, and he kind of was like the Hulk of this universe, like this tragic figure. And it's so bizarre to see it because it's just like there's like a hole in his heart. It's clearly like trying to be like, you know, an action flick version of that character. But it's just such a dumb design, but I can't tell you it's ugly. Like, it is an interpretation that has its merits. It looks like a thing. It has stuff going for it. It's bulky and decrepit and prosthetically inclined with a bunch of scars and broken pieces and literal bricks and shards coming out of him. But he does a lot more than you're expecting in this movie. And it's like, if he was an action star, yes, his body would break down a lot more. So it would look bizarre and stupid. I can't hate it for that. I can't. I cannot hate it for that, for being like that weird mechanical piece. It's just, that movie is so bizarre, and it's such like a radical change to what we know from that design to be. Very strange, but it's not bad. It's Shirler Hensley? Yeah, it's fine. So weird though, you know? Like, if you haven't seen that Van Helsing movie, I can't recommend you do, because it's just like other things are going to come up from it. Jumping from there, let's head over to another attempt. Oh man, I love, like, this is like my favorite thing in the world. It's like when people are attempting, like, what if we take like the classic, you know, no IP public domain character and turn it into a Marvel movie? Well, you get something like I, Frankenstein. Aaron Eckhart, that actor who people love, do they? He's Two-Face. Well, he, in 2014, got to become Frankenstein. It's like, it's the future, and he's still alive, and monsters have taken over the world. Can he save us? Can he be the hero we need? Probably not. It's the worst design by far. It's just Aaron Eckhart with scars on his face, and you're like, I can't believe they got him to do that. And you know it's just scars because it's him. It's his face, and the scars radically change in terms of aesthetic. So freaking weird. But it's just a ripped dude with scars on his body. Like, there's nothing to it. And the movie sucked, and nobody watched it. And I admire it so much for existing. Like, it's an idea. Again, like, I like these things that are just ideas of taking, like, the tragic figure of horror, which is like the stiff monster that walks with its arms up, and it's like trying to find its place in this world, but everybody wants to kill it for looking the way it does. A beautiful story. And then it's just like, what if we just made the guy from The Dark Knight into a monster, and we didn't even try hard? You know, we just had him be that. And again, a couple of years later, after I, Frankenstein, Radcliffe and McAvoy do one called Victor Frankenstein, and the monster looks more like the Van Helsing one, and it's all shitty. Like, this is the era. I don't understand why everybody was doing this. It's so bizarre, like the obsession we had. And that's the thing too. I know I already talked about it. We'll talk about it a little bit for a second here. The end of the month, the GeekWave is going to be all about every attempt of the Dark Universe. So we're going to be looking more at some of these movies that were like, what if we marveled these? I think we'll start with Van Helsing back and like forward in time and everything that came out after that. But so bizarre. So bizarre. Like, a year apart, we have the action hero one, and this one's like, what if we Sherlocked Holmes up like Igor and Frankenstein? You're like, nobody wants that. Nobody asked for that. Stop trying to make things Sherlock Holmes. The Sherlock Holmes movie was a fluke. Like, those movies should not have been as good as they were. It doesn't work. It's so bizarre and weird, and I don't understand how it got made. Crazy. So crazy. Now, there's that animated movie called Igor. Remember, where it's like, it's Igor, the little scientist boy. Was there a Frankenstein in that? I can't remember. Let's see if we can find one. I don't like there. It was a cool design. I don't think the movie had any like longevity to it, and nobody really remembered it. And I'm not getting any hits, so let's just move past that one, and we'll head over to the Monster Squad because that's what I want to talk about. The thing that these companies they're just forgetting. They're like, we have to do an origin movie. It's like, no, you have the Monster Squad. Do that again, you know? You have a Wolfman, a Mummy, a Creature, a Dracula, and a Frankenstein all show up to help these kids in this weird movie. It is okay, you know? But what's cool about it is, like, it's just a Frankenstein, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is literally nothing of it, nothing else to say. They just have a Frankenstein. And those are all the major ones on film. Of course, looking at our list, the best one, of course, is the original Universal Monster, and probably Young Frankenstein. That's probably the other one that's actually really good. Moving from there, let's talk a little bit about the interpretations on television, and we got to talk about this guy because I absolutely adore this show, and I love talking about this interpretation. This to me is the most in line with I think with what Mary Shelley was talking about, like this tragic figure who kind of becomes this poetic creature waxing his stories to anybody who will listen. Just a broken-hearted, disfigured man walking the ruins of worlds. Penny Dreadful. Now, I will at some point be doing an entire retrospective on Penny Dreadful, just talking about that series again. But you had Rory Kinnear, who is a fantastic just character actor, play the creature. It's just simply called The Creature. Victor Frankenstein, played by Harry Treadaway, is a main character in that show, and the creature is just his first creation who's come back to torment him. This creature longing for purpose, and I really like that aspect because it allows you to flesh out his story, to find his purpose. He does the whole arc where he wants a bride, but it's just a gothic, broken man trying to find his place. He knows poetry, he reads stories. It's amazing. It is so amazing and has so much going for it. And it's just a really fun, creative interpretation with the big robes on him. And he actually has hair. He's just got like one scar on the side of his face. He's all pale. But he is just a perfect personification of that type of character. This broken man, so exiled from society that he wants to find his place in it again. Doesn't know where that is. It's amazing. The more I just remember Penny Dreadful, the more it just impresses me that show got made, and how I wish we could do more stuff with it. But if you want to know how to do like an actual cinematic universe with the Universal monsters, this is how you do it. Because you had Frankenstein, you had a Wolfman, you had Dracula, you had Dr. Jekyll, you had Victor Frankenstein in there for a bit, the Bride showed up for a bit, you were just missing some of the more key ones, you had Van Helsing relatives, Nina Harkness was in it, like all of those characters were in it. That's how you get it done. That's how you do it, and this is my favorite. I'm just going to cut the lead right now. This is my favorite interpretation of the creature. Just this guy looking for purpose, trying to find his world. He thinks he can fall in love. He thinks he can create a creature to love him, and it doesn't. And that's really fun. And then jumping from there, we have the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Herman freaking Munster. I just did a review on the new Munsters film. It's weird. Herman Munster. We learned how he was created in that. He was built to just be a weird guy. It's insane. It's a good interpretation, though. Again, it's like he's just the Frankenstein of the family. So he's just a big-looking guy, silly, making dumb jokes, willing to have fun. That's all he is. And it's cool, it's crazy, it's interesting. There's nothing else to it. He is just a really nice guy, a good father, a great husband, making dumb jokes, saying stupid shit. We get it. That's Herman Munster. Not officially a Frankenstein because we don't call him that, but he is there and he's one of the more iconic interpretations of that character. So there you go. Herman Munster. Oh man. It's such a weird franchise to talk about because I don't know anybody who really knows it, you know? Like if I were to say Mockingbird Lane, maybe 3 people I know in my real life would know what I'm talking about. Everyone else would be like, what is that? If I say the word Munster, Some people might know that. Now, again, with television, there is like parodies out the wazoo of people dressed up as Victor Frankenstein doing riffs on that, where it's like, we created this. It's like one of the, like a Treehouse of Horror or something, like we always do like the creations of that. So I only have one more I want to talk about in terms of television, and that is the Frankenstein that appears on Scooby-Doo, because it has kind of stayed with the show. Like, there is a Frankenstein's monster that exists in this universe. It has like a pretty simple design. Again, the green body, the purple on it. Like, the purple's a great choice. I say it because it feels like it's coming back into prominence. Like, with the return of like the monster into prominence, like people are remembering like, oh yeah, like Scooby-Doo had one on there. Like, you can buy costumes. Like, as I'm looking at this, you can buy costumes of the Frankenstein from that show. You could buy collectibles and action figures of that to celebrate the 50 years of Scooby-Doo. Like, it is a design, and it's a good one, and it's iconic, and it's just the Frankenstein. He's got like the walk, the hunched over back. You've seen it a million times. That is the character. It works fine. I don't like it as much as I like the creature, but it works the same nonetheless. Let's talk about some comic book ones. Of course, we have to talk about DC's Frankenstein, which is a cool character. Sometimes he works for an organization called Shade. Other times he's just like a gun-toting boy, just part of like their horror anthology stuff. He comes in and he's just like, again, it's the I, Frankenstein thing done right, where it's like, it's not just like a hunky actor with scars on him. The dude looks rough. He has a really cool body of armor, just this gun-toting, sword-wielding freak. And he's intense and he's scary. And like, this is also one of like the earliest interpretations I have of this character, where you just see him and you're like, yeah, that's him. That's this Frankenstein. He is a monster hunter. He's the slayer of demons. He goes into the world and does all these stuff. He's awesome. He's like this immortal creature that does everything. He's cool. It's a great design. Again, this is probably one of the best designs out there for the character, because there can have different body parts with different styles to it. Sometimes he's depicted as having two different colored arms. Other times it's just like he's got a mohawk and a big gun, and he goes around and saves the world. It's like, I have Frankenstein for cool people. This is how you do Frankenstein, man. If you're doing a comic book Frankenstein at the big two, that is how you do it. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, DC did it better, but Marvel does have one. So the thing about Marvel's Frankenstein and all of their original monsters is that they were just kind of created because Stan Lee's like, well, I want to tell monster stories. I love those things. So you got the Wolfman, Jack Russell, and you got Dracula made. You got a zombie called Simon Garth, and you had all those characters made. They also had the Punisher become Frankencastle for a while. Doesn't matter. But this one's just, yeah, he's just a Frankenstein-ish guy. And there's nothing to it. He's not the one that comes back the most out of all of these concepts, but they did do a Frankenstein. There's technically a Frankenstein out there in the Marvel world, and it's okay. And I know I keep saying Frankenstein when we're talking about the monster. You all know what I mean. You get it. I don't have to say it. Just relax. But yeah, he's there. It's interesting. You understand it. It's cool. I remember, like, when I was a child, one of the first, like, actual sets of Marvel Legend action figures I owned was the monster ones that came with Dracula, the zombie, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. And that was, like, my first connection to those characters. Like, that was the Marvel set I knew. So having them come back is cool. But DC did it better. But DC also had a book called Fables, and Fables is one of my favorite comic books of all time, but they also had their own interpretation of Frank, which is just like a head in the jar that one of the monkeys can talk to. And there was like the book where he's like a Nazi experiment, and I think Bigby has to rescue him, but it's like, yeah, that's another cool interpretation of the character. And that makes sense, if you want to go that route. For a more contemporary audience, like a Nazi experiment becomes what he is, and he's just like a head in a jar. That's cool. But, of course, how could we deny that the DC's Agent of Shade did it the best, because they did. And as I was also doing my research, and I was trying to come up with like cool toys that we could talk about. I didn't find that many toys for this character. So the one I do want to focus on is this set from 1992 called Big Frank, which is a play school toy where you can like put stuff inside of a Frankenstein doll. Yeah, it's cool. It's one of the most iconic ones, I guess. Like, I would actually track this down and own it because it's just a little baby Frankenstein boy. Yes, there are interpretations. There's ones based on the Universal monsters that are cool. There's toys based on every movie we talked about. But just like an original thing, it's hard to find those. There's a couple of them that are more obscure, but I wanted to talk about that one. So Big Frank, that is cool. Play School made a fun toy. There is Frankenstein from Monster High, who I have talked about way too much in the past couple of days than I ever thought I would in my life. And currently NECA Toys is doing a issue of like the Ninja Turtles meet Universal Monsters, and they made Raphael the Frankenstein monster, which is kind of a cool thing, but just really fun toys, you know? There's always a Frankenstein toy out there, but it's always just like, you know, based off of like the Universal Monster one. So I didn't really want to like get into all those. But you get it. They're fun. Everything's fun. Look at all these cool toys and concepts, you know? Like, who's doing one currently? NECA's doing one. Super 7 is doing one. Jada Toys is doing one. Migos have put out a couple recently. There's just a bunch of Frankenstein toys that are cool, but they're just not like, you know, popular, right? Or maybe not popular is the wrong word. They're just based on the movies. There's no original Frankenstein out there, really. Which I get, but Big Frank, that's the one to get. That's the one I think is going to make people the happiest and have something fun to play with. It's cool. Frankenstein, what a cool concept and a cool character. The monster is awesome. So out of all of those, my top 5 interpretations will go with the original Boris Karloff one. We'll go with Young Frankenstein's Peter Boyle. We will go with Rory Kinnear's Penny Dreadful one, DC Comics version of the character. And I guess we'll throw in Mary Shelley's original creation. Those are the best interpretations of this character. And that's true. And again, like every episode, I do want to end things with a couple of recommendations for you guys. So the recommendations, we're going to go with watch Penny Dreadful again because it's a fantastic show and worthy of your time. Watch all of the old Karloff movies. They are really fun and really creative. Check out Fables, which is my favorite comic book of all time. And if you're interested, Monster High the movie is way better than it has any right to be. But what's your favorite interpretation of Frankenstein's monster? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, why don't you give us a rating right now? Definitely helps this channel find its footing and help it grow. So that is going to do it for this episode of the GeekWave. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.